Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining. This is Anshul here from Antler. We also, of course, have Rajiv with us already. He's sharing a screen. We will begin in the next 3 minutes and let more people join us. Meanwhile, yeah, I will record this session, and of course, if you miss something in between, I will be sharing this as a YouTube link via Luma, right? So you'll have the whole session, but please stay with us meanwhile.
Hey folks, we'll start in probably just about a minute. Okay, I think we can get started. So the way this will work is I'll spend probably 25 to 30 minutes on the presentation. So thanks for joining in. I think a lot of you who probably are on the edge of becoming a founder, this is a session which will give you at least sort of 10 pointers to ask yourself very hard questions and ask yourself whether you're ready to start a VC-backed company. And then we'll keep the last 20-25 minutes for Q&A. So as I cover the material, you can sort of also post your questions either on the chat window or wherever we can see so that we can sort of answer those questions. So just keep posting those questions so that we can just answer it wherever is the right relevant time. Okay, so I always start some of these slightly heavier sessions with a Dilbert, so I'll spend 30 seconds ensuring that you can go through this. A lot of people probably are in jobs where a part of their brain is thinking of some startup idea, but for whatever reason, they have not either made the jump, though they have been telling their friends and telling themselves that they want to become a founder, but they have not yet become. So if you are one such, I think this will be something that you'll be able to relate to quite a bit. Um, I think it's better to sort of start with the very sort of provocative statement, which is entrepreneurship is not for everyone, right? Which is a lot of very smart operators, a lot of very strong operators. A bunch of you will probably be very strong operators. Not everyone needs to be a founder. Not everyone will enjoy being a founder. Not everyone will have the passion to be a founder. As much as it's made out to be extremely, sexy and romantic, and you have press coverage and you have a lot of, stuff that, the world celebrates. I think it also comes at almost, what you see is maybe 1 in 100. What you don't see are the pains, which are 99 in 100, right? So I would say that, and we'll talk through some of the stuff that you'll go through, which is why I think it's a very provocative, deliberate statement. Even if you're a great operator, entrepreneurship is not for everyone. And what do I mean by that is, I think there's a lot of people who will be great operators creating great impact in big companies, in startups, in scale startups, in early stage startups, who sort of, and when you ask those 10 hard questions, you'll realize as to why maybe even though you're a great operator, you might not enjoy being a founder. Today's session is going to focus on sort of the third bucket, which is a VC backed founder. A bunch of the 10 skills that I talk about will be relevant to even if you're going independent or being a freelancer, or whether you're a bootstrap founder, a bunch of it will be relevant, but all 10 will be more relevant to at least someone who wants to raise venture capital. And really, if you really want just your own sort of handle on time, and I think the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years is going to be a lot about many people turning sort of freelancers or having their control of their own time, right? You don't need to be a founder. Leave aside a VC-backed founder. You don't need to be any founder to just have control of your own time and have some flexibility, right? You can be, and a bunch of you maybe are in that boat already. If you really want to create an institution beyond yourself, and in most cases of being a founder, most cases, whether that's a service business, whether that's a regular product business that doesn't have to hyperscale, you probably are better off being a bootstrap founder. Now, what is a bootstrap founder is not just about raising venture capital, it's also not growing at crazy rates that require crazy venture capital, right? Typically, you become a venture capital backed founder only and only if you are ready for the journey as a founder, one. Two, you are very clear that you want to build a company that really scales up with technology, with people, it spends on brand, with a variety of stuff that you want to scale up 10x, 20x year on year in the first 3, 4, 5 years, and maybe scale up at least 3, 4x in the years 4, 5, 6, 7, and scale up at least 40, 50% year on year in the years 7 to 10. Unless you're thinking of these kind of crazy scale up, and now if you just sort of compound it, it's almost like 1,000x in a 10-year period. You should not be building a VC back company because the equivalent of being on a treadmill. You're all of us are on treadmills, even if you're just working in a company. You're sort of always increasing pace, maybe increasing elevation on the treadmill. But then imagine the treadmill is also rotating and you're also sort of free falling on the treadmill, right? That's sort of the analogy to being a venture back founder, which is why maybe only one in probably 100 people become founders, right? There are for every one person, I'm sure there are 100 people who are very good employees. And within 10 such people, maybe only one needs to really raise venture capital. That's really the funnel you're looking at, right? Which means that you are one out of maybe 1,000 if you are really thinking of starting a venture back company. Now, why do I say that, right? So I've sort of bucketed the 10 reasons into sort of 3+1 buckets. And really, it starts with the why. I'll talk about the whys that are real whys as to why you should start a venture back company. And I'll also talk about the not so good whys, right? The first is the joy of creation. Whether you're very young, 20, 21, whether you're 30, 35, after working for 10 years, whether you're in your 40s, the joy of creation is something that you really like the 0 to 1 journey. You would have shown that across a variety of your experiences. You might have shown that in your college. You might have shown that across your bunch of experiences, right? In terms of just what it is to get the joy of creation. And unless you have the joy of creation, something 0 to 1, something you see the impact on people, probably the startup journey is not for you. Second is you really are obsessed about solving some customer problem. A lot of people, again, get into saying, I want to build a startup. It never starts that way. It starts with you really wanting to solve something deeper, which essentially means that you're just obsessed about solving some real customer problem. And or you've been in a space and you see the pains of a customer over a 5-year period, 10-year period. It could be fintech, it could be consumer, it could be healthcare. And you really feel that, okay, if something is broken here, you don't know what is fully broken, you don't know what the solution is, but you believe you have passion for that space, that you actually want to spend the next 5, 10 years at least to actually go solve it much stronger. So that's the second one. The third why is a really large market opportunity. In the venture back industry, unless the market is in the hundreds of millions of dollars, or the audience numbers are in the tens or hundreds of millions of users, it becomes very difficult to build a venture scale business because the way venture capital works is it always rewards large outcomes. And if the market itself is very limited, you will never be able to do a large outcome, right? Which essentially means that if you want to really raise venture capital and build a business, you would rather play in a large market, or you would rather play in a market which you believe will be large. There is no point in playing in a market which is either too crowded or the market itself is too small. So those are three very essential whys: the joy of creation, which translates to your passion, the obsession to solve a real customer problem, and you're able to see some problem, and three, a really large market opportunity. Now, what are the not so great whys? If you're not very impact driven, or if you're someone who thinks that money and fame is your thing, there are many better ways. There are many different ways to do, get all that instead of being a venture backed, founder. You could go invest in the stock market, be great at it. You could be an influencer. You could do a variety of other things rather than, you could grow well within a startup, but don't start a startup because the pressure of it is just this failure is less from day one written 90% of your case back companies that become something. And please, if you thought that you're a bad boss and you want to start up, that's like the worst reason because like 10 bosses in the venture backed industry. Even if you are the CEO founder, you're sort of answerable to not just your co-founders, your employees, the press, the investors, your customer. You're always in some sort of, burning fire that you are sort of dousing, right? So it's no longer just one bad boss that you're answering to. So I would say these are the why nots. And if this is sort of, I'll sort of do a summary at the end of all the 10. But these are the first three, very focused on the why of why you would start a startup. The second is the how, which is how do I approach this? What are the things that, how, and what are the skills that I prioritize to be ready for it, right? These are the things that you sort of evaluate before you even get an idea or think. It's probably better off that you're T-shaped. Now, what is T-shaped? And either if you're too in depth on just one thing, which is either one sector or one function, or you're too horizontal, right? You're a jack of all trades. You're not great at something. The problem in not being great at something is it's very easy to sort of be okay with mediocrity, right? The best founders are always very strongly T-shaped. When I say T-shaped, they're really great on product. They're really great on sales. They're really great on marketing. One of it, right? Not everything, at least one of it. They're really great on engineering. The reason that helps is also the fifth point, which is you're able to build a very high quality network if you're T-shaped because you're in depth on something. You have reputation on something in the company that you work with or in a community that you're part of. So extremely important. It gives your own confidence that much higher. You're able to get into really strong customer insights. So be known for something. If you're very early in your professional career, don't just be someone that hangs around, right? Because that's not going to build anything great in terms of network. People respect people who do something in their companies, right? Which essentially means that you have a much higher chance of being excellent in something while also having a horizontal hat on, being good at strategy, being good at people, being good with engineering, being good with, a variety of other stuff, but you don't have to own any of that, but you be excellent in something. So that's the T-shaped. The high quality relevant network is also sort of a function of the same thing, which is you start building, maybe 10, 20 people that can swear by you or 10, 20 people that you can jam really in depth. Because a lot of people, say hi to people in forums and in networks and in, maybe have a chat for 5 minutes and say that, I know these people, I know this VC, I know, this person, this founder. That's not as, important as knowing 15, 20 really strong experts because those high quality relevant networks are people who can become your first customer in a B2B setting or your co-founder because the high quality network has seen you way more than a 5 minute conversation, which means that they respect you. They know you for your skill set. They appreciate you for something. They trust you for something. They might put their money in you. So a high quality relevant network is always more important than a sort of a low fidelity network. Last but not the least, it's extremely important that you don't have a broken personal situation before you start up. And a lot of people, if you're in a fresh new romantic relationship, if your bank balance is crappy, if your health is bad, if your mental health is bad, your physical health is bad, please do not enter a startup because it's only going to get worse. All of those things will only going to get worse, right? If you're just about having a kid, you just will not have the time to do justice in both places, and you will feel very guilty. You will feel that you're doing too much sacrifice. While startups will always involve sacrifice, if it's too much sacrifice at the cost of some level of mental health and mental peace, it has a chance to break even some of the smartest people. So I would say Just the polar opposite of this on the how not. If you're just a jack of all trades, there are some successful founders who have been jack of all trades, but generally it comes with them being very good on something also, not shallow reach, and not just that your sort of work, life is broken. Some aspect of your life is broken or too new. Do not enter the startup journey because it has a chance of breaking that aspect of life. And or if you expect work-life balance in a startup, that's never going to happen, right? In the first 3, 4, 5 years, you're going to be every week, not just be working 70 to 80. I mean, all of us have 120 hours in a week outside of the hours we sleep. And there are only maybe one or two other things. Everyone has to take care of mental and physical health at some level. So you're going to spend at least 70 to 80 hours. And I'm not talking about just being busy 70 to 80 hours, 70 to 80 quality hours as a early stage startup founder. So you're not going to have work-life balance. You're going to sacrifice a bunch of stuff, not just Netflix time, maybe travel time, maybe friends time, maybe spouse time. You'll have very little time left. So you'll have to really focus on where you spend on your personal life. You will have time for some part of your personal life, but it can't be too many things, which essentially means that you will need to shift to an always on thing. Do not expect work-life balance. If it's a phase of life where you want all that, it's not the right time to start up. The next three are the what in terms of what are the things that you should be working on, or what are the things that you should, as skills, evaluate for yourself. Three very specific skills I wanted to call out, which is one, you generally have a very deep consumer insight, and that comes with either a lot of intuition, a lot of appreciation for the customer, a lot of depth on the customer, or a lot of data. If you don't have a differential deep customer insight, and if it's just a very surface level insight, you could start something, but it won't really scale up, and you'll have to push a lot for it to scale up. It won't have the crazy hyper scale generally, right? So spend a lot of time deriving that deep customer insight, and just don't get started off on just the next idea that you get. Next is infinite energy and drive. And this is something that a lot of people, it's not just the number of hours that you sort of put in, it's also just that you're always going to be, selling your. See, you can't be someone who will only get motivated by having a boss. You're your own boss in this setup. You will have to have infinite energy to drive yourself against many, many rejections, many, many walls. And not just that, you'll have to have infinite energy even at 8 p.m. every day, even at 8 a.m. every day to drive the team around you to get them there and their energy. Because not everyone is a founder. You're the founder. So their energies will be at least 20%, probably lesser. So you'll have to keep driving energy of people around you, which essentially means that you have to be a 2x energizer bunny, or literally have your battery very, very high. The last but not the least, in India, at least the founders that we see, a bunch of them who are very, storytelling is not a skill that's taught in the Indian education system too much, even in the MBA system. So if you're very strong in storytelling, that actually makes you unique, because you're able to sell it not just to VCs, but also to future employees with absolutely no data or money, right? Because you're always attracting someone or the other in the early years of your startup, some great employees, maybe some press article, maybe some customer, maybe some partner, supplier. So storytelling will go a long way in sort of helping in the venture path, in getting your startup off the ground in a much, much faster way. Now, what are the things that may or may not really help you? I would actually start with the third one here, which is I think the VC ecosystem is now beyond copying, the Uber of X or the Amazon of Y or whatever else. I think we are beyond that. So just a copycat idea is no longer going to be, because just like you can copy, someone else can copy. Uh, as I said, you cannot be only motivated by someone else holding a torch for you. You have to be your own motivator. Last but not the least, your deep customer insighting is not going to come from just sitting in a conference room and really brainstorming with three other like-minded people. You will be way better off spending that time with customers out in the field. So for every 1 hour that you spend in your office, building your pitch deck and sort of having calls and roping people in, spend at least 2 hours outside, which means that two-thirds of your day should be with customers in the early days of your building your startup. One third should, of course, be in building that startup. Last but not the least, one of the things that we have always seen where the best founders, a skill set that differentiates the best founders from the people who are very well intentioned but don't become something great, is their level of grit. And their level of grit, of course, means that they have really handled multiple failures in their past. It could be in their personal life, it could be in their professional life. But people who have only had success in their college, who have only had success at work, who have just been a celebrated star, uh, really find this journey very hard in the early days because you see a lot more rejections than you have ever in your life, which essentially means that you have a much higher chance if you have seen that failure and failure is not new to you in the early days of your startup, right? So we have seen that really come through in terms of people who have taken a lot of shit in their work life or seen failures, in some form or the other, do this journey much better than those that don't. Um, this is sort of a ready reckoner again, just to very quickly go through, which is you really, and I'll tell one point right after this slide, which is you want to really badly create impact. So how strong is your, what I call the creator quotient? How obsessed are you in terms of obsessed on a problem statement? How big is the market size? This is a very specific question in the venture backed world. What is your T-shaped skill? Are you just a jack of all trades, or are you just a super specialist in research? Or both of those extremes are not probably good enough to be the CEO founder. Do you have a high quality, in-depth network that you can call on to? Is your personal situation under control, or are you still figuring out some aspects of life? Do you have a deep differential customer insight based on data, not just your intuition is even better? Do you have infinite energy to pull through the next many years that you're going to throw yourself at the problem? Do you have a strong storytelling capability to pitch to any and everyone in the early days with pretty much nothing in your hand? Last but not the least, have you handled failures? These are the 10 super strong questions that any strong operator thinking of becoming a founder in the next, leave aside 3 6 months, even in the next 6 to 12 months, should push yourself. Having said all this is not something that you evaluate, oh, I'm a 7 on 10, I'm a 5 on 10. It doesn't work that way because you're never going to be fully ready. There can be a great founder who's today only a 3 on 10. There can be a founder who really succeeded even though they are a 9 on 10, right? Because there's too many other variables that go into this whole decision. At the end of the day, you will be making this decision. The best founders make this decision before they are fully ready. It's almost like an MVP, right? An MVP is never fully ready, right? You call it an MVP because you're embarrassed about putting it out. Most likely, the greatest founders take that decision before they are ready to be a founder, right? Because that sort of takes the guts, that sort of takes that real strong conviction to say, I am ready, even though the world might not be believe that I'm fully ready, or I might actually not be fully ready. And that's the difference between a great founder and someone who's going to probably keep talking that I'll be a founder, but never makes that cut. We see that also happen a lot, unfortunately. A lot of people, well intentioned, are never able to step out and they can keep giving those reasons, right? Maybe it's a loan, maybe it's a situation personally, maybe it's just that they don't have that idea. And maybe it's just that they're great operators. Maybe they're not meant to make this journey. But it's important that you ask these questions and these hard questions to yourself before making that decision. Um, just wanted to obviously, before starting to take your questions, make a mention of what we have set out to do, which is I'll talk about the third one. If you're a founder who's already started up, uh, and want to pitch to the residency, we'll be running our next residency in the new year. We decided not to do one this quarter. We ran the last AI residency last quarter. So if you're someone who's already become a founder, who has a startup, whether AI or not, you can pitch to us. We might run the residency specific to AI teams. So even if you're doing a D2C company or something else in the India stack and not AI, you could apply to us during the next quarter. And we will be actively looking. You can also apply to us right now. And if you're not an AI founder, we are looking at founders always. And that's the next AI residency. It's specifically for teams. We are not looking for individual founders, looking for a co-founder there. And that's something that we will talk a lot more about in the new year. If you're looking for co-founders, which is something that we launched last week, earlier we explained in the last session that we used to do this as part of the residency cohort. We've now moved that to before day zero. We call this the co-founder club. We already have approximately, I think, 400 or 500 applications for that. We've already identified, we have not yet communicated to people, but we've already identified almost 40, 50 people or so. We are identifying the first 100 people who will be part of the co-founder club in the next 2 weeks. We'll be creating that digital community sometime end of this month, which is basically end of next week. So that's the link to apply to the co-founder club. This is specifically for people who are 3 to 6 months away from starting up. and want are looking very actively for co-founders. The best part is very highly curated. You have it's probably going to be a 1:10 or a 1:8 kind of a filtration that we will do for all the applicants. We will look at all the stuff that you fill in into that form. And in addition to what we do digital, we might also do something physical, specifically for people in Bangalore in the first week of December. We're yet figuring out the parts to it. Here, you could be on a job, you could be in between startups. So you don't have to sign any contract. You don't have to have quit your job. You can go ahead and apply, which is why we say 3 to 6 months away, which means that you might still be in your job. You have a higher chance of getting in if you have some direction of what you're looking to build. Of course, if you are even earlier than that, which means that you are sort of 6 to 12 months away, maybe you're figuring out between multiple spaces, multiple ideas, you're a strong operator, uh, and obviously well intentioned to become a founder. Maybe it doesn't happen in the next 6 12 months. That's okay. Please do apply to the Before Day Zero community itself. We have a very active community there. There are almost 700 people already. And really use that as a community to sort of make those nudges for you, make those interactions happen, make those sort of small community cues that might finally push you to becoming a founder, right? And that's the reason you should join that community. So whether that's Before Day Zero, whether that's the co-founder club, whether that's the Antler residency, these are the sort of the three links. The third one, you can apply even now. We will sort of open applications only officially in January. The other two, please feel free to apply already. And we're trying to make Before Day Zero as well as the co-founder club sort of the best place to hang out before you actually become a founder and or before you actually build your own startup, right? So that's sort of the job and the purpose of Before Day Zero and the co-founder club. I think that was sort of the last slide. As I started with Dilbert, I think it should end with Dilbert. Uh, yeah, as much as I frightened you enough on what it takes to be a venture-backed founder, uh, at the end of the day, the best founders, say no to many, many people like us and become the founder and build a great startup. So, all the best on that. So now we can just go to questions. I'll maybe leave it on this slide. Um, and start taking questions. Okay. I'll go top to bottom and someone congratulates Anshul. Okay. Um, when is the next cohort happening? It will be announced in January. The actual cohort itself will be in February. Um, whether it's only AI or all founders, we will figure that part out. But 70% of the companies that we are getting nowadays is actually AI, by the way. So that's the reason why we're taking any D2C companies sort of off the residency cohort. We are working with them directly. We're not running a full-fledged cohort. But we do believe that 70% of all our investments will be just AI, if not 80%. Hi, Ekta, working Ekta this side, building spoken. Hello, if you're already a founder, please do apply to us already. You can just go to antler.co/India and apply there. We might be slower in off cycles, but we will still certainly look at it and respond. How do you differentiate between someone who's emotionally ready versus strategically ready to make the leap? What signals matter the most? I think this is one question which I will never have a clear answer to because it is a call beyond rational, or theory, right? Which is why I said myself that you might actually be a 3 or on a 10 on this, but you might actually be really ready. You might be an 8 on a 10 on this in a very rational, theoretical way, but you might actually not be ready. And it's so difficult to sort of say that because it's a very emotional decision. It's a very intuitive, emotional, human decision. I would say the signal that really matters is you have some deep level of obsession. Amongst this, if I had to sort of prioritize, you're ready for the failure that's going to come. You have some deep level of obsession and you know how to execute. You're not just someone who just talks, right? You know how to execute. If I were to really prioritize, right, the energy level to execute, the obsession to solve something, uh, and you're ready to handle the failure. Those are the three that I would probably prioritize the most amongst this. Okay, there's a Dodo Payments link. I don't know what to make of it. Okay, people are introducing themselves and their startups. Balaji's question is a long one, so I'll try and sort of get the gist of it and read out. I'm So the question is whether to sort of do something on the side and whether that sort of counts negative and or is that okay? Right? Is that if that's the question, Balaji, and maybe you have to first up start writing questions which are easier to read. In the storytelling, you need to be able to pitch your startup in 1 or 2 lines. So you should be asking questions in 1 or 2 lines. I think see, this is a journey which is any which way filled with so many chances of failure that if you really, if you're looking for a co-founder and or if you're looking to pitch to a VC, if it is not 150% of your time that is going into this, of course you're in a job, so people understand obviously you have to go do that job, right? You can't just be spending all of your time in startup. But if you're not in a job and if you're sort of doing something to keep sort of either the monetary engine burning or whatever else, as I said, if you are not able to take a financial hit for the next 6 to 12 months, where your lifestyle and your sort of financial commitments cannot be taken with a zero salary, maybe you're not yet ready, right? If you have to sort of earn a basic salary for the next 6 12 months because you have whatever commitments, you're very early in your career, whatever is your personal situation, you probably are not ready because the next, I would say at the minimum 6, if not 12 months, you need to be ready to work with a zero salary and work crazy hours. If you are that 12 months to 24 months sorted out, even when I started Urban Ladder at that point in time, this is 2012. The only question me and Ashish asked, and our lifestyles were very simple, is we have 24 months of, we didn't have kids at that time, and it was 24 months bank balance, zero salary, we are still able to. What we cannot afford is inventory cost and stuff. We are able to, at that time, we could only spend 5 lakhs each, maybe 10 lakhs we parked in the startup, right? Based on our bank balances then, right? And that's all we did. 10 lakhs, we can put it into this business. We can be without salary for 2 years. That's a great on and so forth, right? So I would say it's the same kind of a question that you ask yourself in terms of, yeah, clearly I didn't read the question properly, Balaji, but I think the question nevertheless is important. If someone is in that situation, please, I would say that doing anything on the side is not worth it. Question is, my tech team, can I leverage this other team or not as an interim team, or should I have an in-house step team? In the current AI world, I don't think people are asking the question whether you have a tech team, whether you have a full-fledged team, all that stuff. Are you able to put out a prototype with either your own self and or with your tech co-founder is all that people are asking. People are not asking for a full-fledged team and stuff. Of course, to go build out with the capital that someone is going to invest in you, they will ask that. Can you recruit the next 2 engineers? So I think today's world, it's way more important to show agility in terms of what you put out. And that's the most important thing. It doesn't matter how you get it done. Soam's question, what mindset traps do ex-employees, especially high performers, struggle with during the transition to founder? And how do you coach them through it? It's a great question, actually. What are the mindset traps? I think either looking for some level of cushion, because in a big company or in a startup, I think not dirtying your hands enough. If you thought that you've been a manager for too long, is something which can be a flip side because you're sort of not ready to dirty your own hands. You're still expecting people, or you just think that you can raise 3 4 million and always work with people and get stuff done. Can be one thing to sort of not go deep enough with customer, not be deep enough on what on earth is actually happening in reality. So people management for too long can be one trap. Second is some level of cushion, which is monetary cushion and or speed of execution. This is sort of the biggest trap, right? You think that you can execute your in a late stage startup. Obviously, compared to an early stage startup, your late stage startup maybe is already executing slower. So you think that that speed is okay in your startup. It is not. Speed is the biggest make or break for a startup. Um, Unless you're building something foundational like ChatGPT, speed is really the make or break. So these are 2 3 traps: the people trap, the speed trap. I think these are And third is probably you think that just because you have an ex Flipkart or an ex Grow or an ex whatever, people should just sit up and notice, right? Yeah, they do. But it doesn't ensure that you raise capital, or it doesn't ensure that you get your client. So I would say that just the entitlement trap is the other trap, which is that, hey, I'm ex Grow, so I should be raising a 10 million. I'm ex Grow, so I should be getting these financial clients. Yeah, people will sit up and notice you, but it doesn't guarantee anything. So I would say these are the two, three traps that people should avoid. Um, Co-founder club, when are the people who are part of it will be announced next weekend onwards. We'll create the actual group December 1st, and we'll sort of see if we want to do something in Bangalore December 4th, 5th. Um, AI residency is not relevant to solo founder building their company. So there's a catch. AI residency, we will evaluate even solo founders, but the bar is just that much higher, right? Um, if you are a solo founder, the good part in the AI world is you could make your own lovable prototype. But then the bar that the solo founder is both going to be building a strong prototype as well as being selling the product, as well as building the brand, as well as doing fundraising, just the bar becomes that much higher. So be ready for that bar. Historically, we have seen, because this journey, not just for functional technical reasons, even for emotional reasons, is a journey that requires two or three people to come together, because there's just a lot of sort of bouncing off, and one person is down, the other person needs to motivate, blah, blah, blah. The journey is just better off, which is why 90% of startups generally have a co-founder, successful startups. Apparently, that number is changing in the AI world, FYI. So maybe in 5 years, that number goes down to 70%. But I would say that, yeah, just the bar becomes higher if you're a solo founder. Is it mandatory for the person to be based in India right now regarding co-founder club? Not mandatory to be based in India right now, which is why it's a digital community. For the physical activity, we'll pick a subset of people who are based probably only in Bangalore. Um, for the residency cohort, is quitting job when applying necessary? Is it acceptable as long as we quit before the cohort starts? Um, we very strongly encourage you to have spent enough time in the field. Time in the field generally does not happen if you're still in a job, which is why without time in a field, it becomes hard for you to get obsessed about a problem statement and be very clear of what you're pitching. So I would say that you can still apply, but the people who have come through into the cohort, the 24, 25 startups we worked with, I don't know if any of them were in a job when they applied. It just makes it that much tougher, right? Because you're probably very early in your thinking, which shows in your application, which shows in the thought process, which means that you probably should apply in the next cohort. Um, so it shows indirectly somewhere. So it's not a stipulation that you can't apply if you're in a job, and as long as you quit your job before the cohort starts, it just makes a lower probability that you have enough depth to answer the questions. Because you can imagine we picked 25 startups out of 2,500 startups, and we probably talked to like 150 startups, which means that the bar within that becomes very, very high. And we invested in six. So you can imagine sort of the filtration rate that we have. Is a solo founder, I think the question from Guru is also similar, okay, for residency cohorts. If co-founders cohort, the recommended way before applying for residency cohort. If you're a solo founder, our strong urge would be for you to apply to the co-founder club, because that's a community. You can do it from when you are, it takes 3 to 6 months at the minimum to find a great co-founder. So we do strongly encourage, but that's not the only place for you to find a co-founder. You can go to the YC forum, you can go to your college forums, you can go anywhere and do that. What the co-founder club really does is to make sure that the way you do it is just that much better, stronger, more scientific. That's all we try and do to help that journey. Whether you apply to the residency, if you already are very clear on what you're building, you could still go ahead and apply as a solo founder. What is the selection ratio at Antler India residency? Well, the next one we probably want to keep to 15 to 20 teams out of anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 applications. Last time we got 2,000 or 2,500, I think, and we picked 25 teams, but we only invested in six. We don't feel good about that. So we want to keep probably 7 to 8 investments this time from approximately 15 or so residency teams out of anywhere around 1,500 sort of applications. So 1% chance to get into the residency, and within that, a 33 to 40% chance to actually get invested in by Antler. That's sort of the percentages. Take on solo founders, Ekta, I think I sort of talked ad nauseum on that. Abhijit, hey, Rajiv, I'm building Clean, powered LMS, move to tier two. Hopefully, it'll be part of the next cohort. Yes, please do apply. How does Antler view college dropouts as founders? It's seen positively if the company is already getting traction. Yes, Sneham, we actually have, surprisingly, we have almost 13 or 14 out of the 100 plus investments we have done, which is college founders, and some of them are college dropouts. Some of them are solo, actually. A bunch of the college founders are actually solo. So, everything that can work against you is working against you on that. But we have bet on those folks, right? You're a college founder, you sort of don't have any material experience to prove your grit, resilience, operating skills. uh, you sort of are solo, which means that the bar is that much higher. And we have invested in people in space tech and stuff, which is very, very difficult fields. So I would say that as long as you're building something phenomenal and showing some great level of, it's less about getting traction, it's more about you're showing some great level of obsession and storytelling and or energy levels or something to that effect, which I talked about. That's what we really value. So it doesn't matter to us. You should apply, even if you're solo. How important is it to be clear about what we want to build before applying to the residency? It really helps that you're very clear of what you want to build. And when I say what you want to build, it really helps that you're super clear of who the customer is. It really helps as to what is the differential customer insight you have. It is okay that you have questions on what the market size is and or whether what the shape and form of the first product you're going to build. That is okay. If you are not clear of the space and or the customer you're going to build, you're probably too early for the residency. You should probably join the before day zero community. So we really the bar that we keep for the residency is you're super clear on the direction and you're super clear on the customer and you have a level of detail on the customer and obsession and what you want to build that you're able to talk a 3 year journey, a 5 year journey, how you see the customers. Why is it that 5 years later the customer will come and thank you or build a temple for you guys, right? That's really the level of questions that we ask, which essentially means that it's very difficult for you to answer those questions if you're not clear at some level of what you want to build. How do we know if you're an AI company or not? We use AI APIs to generate content. Again, because we have not yet decided whether the next residency is only AI, we would answer this in January if we do, in fact, run an AI residency. The way that we would do it is anything AI native, which means that pre-chat GPT, your startup wouldn't exist. uh, and or there's a very strong interfacing. It can't just be a workflow and or definitive discriminative sort of ML, or natural language processing. It has to be something which uses the power of the LLMs in a very strong definitive way for yourself, right? But again, we will talk about this in January based on what kind of residency we're on. What is the focus of the AI residency? Is there a focus on foundational AI startups which are R&D heavy and or AI agentic startups more on the enterprise GTM side? We do think that most of the startups, because we write a 500K check, will be generally apps and or lower chance that it is very foundational AI models. It is usually plays at the app layer where there's a very, the six startups we invested in, we have not yet publicly announced, but one is, for example, in the dating space, foundationally changing the customer experience using AI. One is in the, enterprise, shop front space, foundationally changing the way companies build shop fronts. So it is sort of probably more the latter than the former. But at the same time, as I said, we have not yet decided whether we're going to run the AI residency or a general residency. But you will know in terms of it that a 500K, what a 500K check. Usually, foundational models need probably way more capital. But enterprise sort of GDM side and or app layer stuff can very easily get started with the 500K and do some very early PMF magic and then go raise a good solid 3 to 5 million seed round. What's the average median age of the founder who took the plunge at Antler? It hovers in that 30 number. Usually someone who's had 2, 3 experiences, in startups who sort of, again, we have both ends of that spectrum. We also have 40-year founders. We also have a lot of 21-year-old founders. but the median age will be somewhere in that 30 plus minus, that 28 to 32 or so. How do you find the right co-founder if it's someone you haven't worked with earlier, have a period of working together in a consulting mode before discussing equity, etc.? This is the purpose of the co-founder club. We will do a much more detailed session. So if you are someone who has not yet applied to the co-founder club, you should. I did one session last week for which the recording should be available. Vignan, if you can drop a note to Anshul, he can send you the link to that recording because I go very detailed into this question. For all the people who sort of want that session, and who are missing in last Wednesday, you can sort of drop a note to Anshul, and or Anshul, you can maybe put a email ID here that people can email, and you can send the recording of that session maybe. If someone is raising 500K USD as a pre-seed round, how much should one dilute? Typical pre-seed rounds are in the plus minus 10%. It could be maybe 9%, 7%. It could be 12%, 13%. Plus minus 10% is pretty okay. So that you can keep the higher dilution for a proper seed round, right? And it also helps to sort of keep that, risk of early PMF. If you don't get early PMF, maybe you never raise a seed round. You sort of shut that down. You spend a year, move on to a next startup, maybe gain some operating experience. Um, at seed round, it usually the dilution becomes almost close to 20%. It's less about, D2C F&B distribution first offline. Hard for me to state a specific number that's right for that business in itself. What kind of assistance is to be expected of VCs? See, platforms like Antler, you can expect certainly at pre-seed, there are two or three kinds of things we do. One is we sort of really act as your sparring partners on what is it that you're building in the first, right? Which is sort of what the residency does. Over the course of the 1.5 months, we really go very deep, ask all the hard questions so that these are questions that you will anyway ask yourself, but it's useful to have sort of one sort of shining light to ask those harder questions based on patterns we have seen. So that's one thing that all VCs do at that very early stage. Sort of be a sounding board for you, not you are the founder, you are close enough to the customer, you are to take the final call on what is it that you want to build, which customer to go after. A VC can never have a say in all that. But a VC can sort of at least be a truth board or a sounding board to whether you're fooling yourself or you have really thought out answers based on a lot of customer insights. So sounding board is the number one job. Number two job is really to just write the capital and write the capital really fast to your account, right? Can we get the capital across to you in a 1 month, or are we going to put some conditions and precursors to and tranches and all that stuff, right? Those are all the bad kind of VCs. Just really do it fast. Third is help you sort of really get to that early PMF and put you in front of the seed VCs, right? Because this is a treadmill, as we already said. So you're going to be raising money. You shouldn't be entering the VC path unless you're ready to raise money continuously, which essentially means that you're going to be raising a 500K or $1 million round in the next 6-9 months. What is required? Sort of show the hard mirror there. Are you really hitting PMF? Do you need one more iteration? Do you need to sort of do pivots? Are you asking the hard questions? Is early PMF really happening, or are you just fooling yourself there? And are you even launching the product first up to get to that early PMF, or are you just trying to perfect the product so long that it's going to take you 9-12 months to launch something? So get you to market fast enough, push, sort of keep that bar there and asking whether you've hit the early PMF, but most importantly, getting you to a seed round with the likes of the people who write the anywhere from a 1 million to the 5 million round, the early stage VCs in the country, the micro VCs. So we do something called the showcase. At the pre-seed stage, that's what you should expect for a VC. At different other stages, of course, a VC's job becomes more being able to provide capital because you're a venture capitalist, right? The later the stage you go, really the job of the VC is to provide capital and connections. That's it, right? Everything else becomes secondary. But at that very, very early stage, you do more than just capital and connections. What should be our prime focus when we are building a company? Me and my co-founder, both engineers, are working on building an AI research company to reach a pre-seed round, whether it's MVP or a pitch deck or something else. See, in the AI world, people are asking for prototypes at least. I would say it goes back to the same foundations. What do pre-seed VCs look at? It's really who are the founders, what have they built in the past, some level of credibility on what the founders have done in their past lives. to show some grit, some ability to build, some ability to stand out. Two is what is the market, who is the customer, or how does the market structure work, what is it that you guys are building. Third is what is the differential product inside. Show some very low fidelity MVP in the AI world is good enough if you guys are engineers. As engineers, you can't just show a pitch deck. Some other business guy can show a pitch deck. You can't show just a pitch deck. You have to show some level of a prototype. Yes. And as long as you do that and there is some story woven around this to make a big business, a big product, that can all be in the pitch deck. You don't really need revenue. You don't really need thousands of users and stuff. An early stage pre-seed VC will be able to take a or ask the hard questions on, hey, you guys sound great, look great, but hey, you're going after a market which is really bad, or and then it's your job to either change your view or convince the VC, right? It's one of the two. So that's what's required really at that pre-seed stage. You don't need anything more in terms of traction and revenue, and all that is at the seed stage, not at the pre-seed stage. Aditya Hegde, would companies solving energy security and access be considered for residency, which we see is lacking in India? I think you should just reach out to us if we decide to do an AI residency. Unless you're really AI first, we might not look at you at that point in time. But outside of that, we have at least I would say 6 or 7 investments in things non-AI related to energy or clean tech. So please do reach out to us. Okay, it's a long question from Rahul. I'm a lawyer with legal tech AI idea, but my history I've dealt with option paralysis, never stuck to one career or field. However, I'm convinced of an idea. So do you think the journey and risk is worth it to let go of being a lawyer and committing to a startup fully? I have 4 degrees, including 2 masters. Humble brag. Okay. This makes my decision difficult. If you ask all this question, you probably are not ready, Rahul. My honest answer. Because otherwise, with all of this education, you probably would have jumped in already. I mean, you can get a job whenever you want, and you probably have a good enough bank balance being a lawyer. So you should have just jumped in, honestly. So I would say that, if you're asking this question, maybe you should evaluate whether being a strong operator is probably better suited, or just from what you have said, yeah, you should have probably jumped in long back. Um, is there any stipend during residency? If yes, how much? We haven't decided the stipend for the next one. Probably it's around 1.5 lakh. Nowadays we don't look at it as much as a stipend as it's a small grant to sort of cover the cost of the residency period and staying close to the office, or if you're moving from Delhi, or the travel, or just really as sort of a grant is the way we look at it nowadays. Do you mind sharing your email? Want to drop my pitch deck? You can just go to antler.co/India and then apply. It's easier. You'll get a response faster. My email ID irrespective is rajiv@antler.co. What is the percentage of startups Antler invested in deep tech startups? Pure deep tech, funnily, we are increasing it now. I think every quarter we do at least one now. In the first 3 years, it was very low. Today, we have probably 7 that would qualify as deep tech out of the 107 startups, which is low, but I wouldn't be surprised if that number keeps shooting up. At least 1 in 5 startups. In the next 2-3 years, I wouldn't be surprised if this number increases to 1 in 5, 20% from this current 5-6%. I am based in Indiranagar. My friend works at Sarvam. St. Antler. Antler's residency office is in your same building. The office I'm sitting in is not in that building. Chance to visit sometime and understand how a VC team functions. We will be doing sessions as part of, a bunch of the residency cohort as well as the co-founder club. So we will never be able to scale up doing sessions on this in the real world, unfortunately. More about the VC system. I'm sure this session is out there somewhere. So you should probably look at Nitin's session and/or join the co-founder club, and we'll be doing that session as part of the Antler residency phase where we are scouting applications. We'll probably do that session this time. So maybe you should just wait for January. That session from Nitin will sort of really clear a lot of your doubts on how VCs operate. Question from Priyanka. What is the percentage tech and women founders that apply for Antler's programs? Percentage women founders, to be honest, is low. It's sort of approximately around 10%. In past cohorts, we've had at best around, I think, one cohort where we had 15 or 16%. but it usually hovers, and we try our best to try to increase that, but that number is around 10%. Percentage of tech in the past cohorts has been around pure tech engineering tech is around 30%. Now, in the new world, because we are not taking solo founders, this is not really applicable. Co-founder club, we expect at least 30-40%, if not more, to be tech folks, pure engineering folks. In the actual residency cohort, which now we are only doing teams, it's really generally a mix of business and tech folks. We don't do any solo founders any longer, or even if it's solo founders, typically they are pseudo business and tech. What are the milestones for deep tech startups that VC expects for pre-seed round? Huh. We don't actually have milestones, honestly. We really work with the founders, understand what their passion is, what is it that they want to build, and invest at with literally zero product, zero code, zero anything. We generally look for what is it that they want to build, and almost all our bets have happened with nothing that I would qualify as any milestone. So if you're a deep tech founder wanting to apply to us, there's really no milestone that we're looking at. Um, I built a clickable Figma prototype as an MVP, received helpful feedback from 30 to 40 relevant users. Is this enough for a pitch? Should I improve the MVP and formalize it? No, you don't. This is good enough for a pitch. Silly question. My batchmates, colleagues are building in drones and wearable space. Should I ask them to apply to Antler? Absolutely. We have been evaluating. We actually have a very good portfolio company called Armory, which is helping, India in the Indian geopolitical situation that India has right now. Right, that drone warfare is expected to be something massive. Armory's job is to make sure that India, really battles that out well. Absolutely. Wearables, we have already three, four investments. Please do ask them to apply. Wearables is a space that we are tracking very closely. Is Antler backs cybersecurity startups? This is an area where we have not done too many. Yes, we have maybe two or three till now. But yes, please do apply. Actually, there's one just yesterday that we might make an investment in, which is in that space. Um, During a potential pivot, how do you prioritize your work? Early team is leaving, probably afraid. Revenue streams changes, funding dries up, existing transactions take up your bandwidth. Then you need extra man hours for this pivot. Yep. It's a great question. I wish I had an answer that works for you, Shubham. It's not, it's probably one of the toughest things. We have seen so many founders, even in our own portfolio, who struggle through this. It is a really difficult one. All of what you said is true. Um, I think the cleaning the past first in a very short time period, not to a level of satisfaction that would be great for you, but is something that you're okay with, because the focus now is not about the past. It's about what you want to pivot to and what you want to build. So saving a lot of your energy, money, people for that. Having a clean cutoff on who are excited about the new vision. Maybe that's only 2 out of 5. Maybe that's only 3 out of 10, whatever it is. Having a clean cutoff and jumping as quickly as possible should be the priority. That's a very easier said than done thing, but because if you have 20% of your time, energy, resources, mind space still in the past, it just burns people out. And we have also seen some really strong founders whom we have wanted to invest who have just got burnt out in closing their past thing, right? As much as we would have liked to have taken them to IC. So that's the only thing I would call out, but it's one of there is no one answer to this question. It's one of the toughest personal questions. Is there a minimum equity percentage required to be qualified as a co-founder? YC requires at least, yeah, I would say at least, yeah, I subscribe. Actually, YC recommends that the co-founders should really be almost close to each other. It's a very simple point there, which is, the journey is just starting. So if someone is a co-founder, I am hard pressed to understand as to why the ratio of two co-founders should be anything more than 1.5 is to 1, which means 60-40 is 1.5 is, one has 1.5 times the other person. 66-33 means one has 2 times the other person. So if one person is going to bring 2 times the value of the other person, possible, where one is super, well entrenched in the ecosystem, blah, 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 all that stuff, that's all fair. Their pull of VC, their pull of everything, that's okay, fair. But if it is, imagine if it's 70-30, 80-20. 80-20 means one is 4x the other person. I just don't see the need for that. It is possible that when you go to an IPO, you end up being 2x another person or 3x, but that's after value you have shown over a 3, 5, 10-year period. But at the start, yeah, I mean, might as well just have that person as a co-founding team. I think we're at the 6 o'clock mark, so I'm just going to take maybe last 1, 2 minutes to answer any other questions. Thanks for all the questions, and sorry if something is not answered. We will send over for all the people who are registered on the Luma link. We'll send over the link to the video recording anyway. Does Antler fund DPI initiatives? Yes. Last question is, does a startup need to be registered entity to apply? Not really. You can apply even before you incorporate. Okay. On that note, I hope a bunch of your questions. Um, there is a question that's come on a private message from Ruchali, which is okay. I would, Roshali, you can just mail. I think you probably have done it. You can just reply to that email requesting an answer to this question. I will set it up. It's difficult to address this in a setting. Um, like this, folks. Hope this is useful. As I said, there is no one right answer. It's your personal decision. Jump in when you see is right. The most prioritized of these 10 is really obsessed about a problem statement. You can't sleep without solving it. Massive energy for the next at least 3, 4 years, if not 10 years. You not energy bunny rabbit for yourself, but for many people around you. And three, ability to handle failures. If those three are very high, please jump in. Everything else is solvable largely. Thanks again, folks, for joining in, and all the best for this journey. Do apply to the co-founder club if you feel that's relevant. Bye bye.
Thanks everyone for joining in. I've dropped the link for the co-founder club already on the group. Please scroll up. I'm again anyway going to do it over here again once again. And as Rajiv mentioned, I'll share the recording for the session as well. There will be a YouTube link. And yeah, hope to see you folks sometime soon. Cheers.